Hey friends, welcome to our channel, welcome to our chicken coop. Who knew that there were so many hot button controversial topics about chickens that people fight about all the time? Well, today I'm going to talk about a few of those that gets everybody's feathers ruffled. Let's talk about it. Okay, very first topic, winter chicken care. This is a big one and it covers several different areas. Okay, before we even talk about winterizing your coop or providing winter protection for your birds, you need to talk about the breeds of birds. There are certain breeds of chickens that are very cold hardy, and they really do not need anything in the wintertime. And those are Brahmas, Australorps, Barred Rocks, Rhode Island Reds, Easter Eggers, Wyandottes, and Langshan's. Now, characteristics of those birds that help them through the winter are a thick plumage, a smaller comb, and relatively a bigger body. I have Barred Rocks, Rhode Islands, Easter Eggers, and Leghorns, and the Leghorns are the only ones who aren't very cold hardy. They're a very small bodied bird with big combs. Are you watching out for the chickens? Good boy. Now, heating is a big topic, and there are a lot of backyard chicken keepers who think that they really need to insulate the coop heavily. I don't know why this is so controversial. Most chickens can handle the cold with no issue. You do see that we have a heat lamp here in our coop, but that is strictly to keep the water from freezing. And since it doesn't normally get terribly cold here in Texas, we do have 20-degree days. It'll get down into the teens some years, but it's normally in the high 20s to 40s, so we don't have to worry about freezing that much. I usually keep a heat lamp here in the coop, but it's way far away and really highly secured. It's far away from the chickens being able to get on it. And that's one of the big things about heating your coop is that you could risk fire, especially if you have bedding inside your coop. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. Most modern heat sources that people do use for their coops is fire safe, but there's always the risk. Nobody that I know is really using an open flame lantern to heat or light their coop in the wintertime. But yes, there's always the chance that your birds can get out of control, start fighting, pecking each other, fly up, hit a light bulb, arc it out, and start a fire. But honestly, the chances of that happening are very, very tiny. Okay, now let's talk about bedding in your coop. The first thing we're going to talk about is increasing that fire hazard for your wintertime heating in the coop. Anything that you put on the floor that's fluffy and flammable can add to that risk. Additionally, with the topic of bedding, which is another really, really hot topic, to put bedding or not put bedding, we elect not to put bedding. And there is a big reason for this, but that bedding covers straw, hay, wood shavings, or even sand. All of them do the same thing, and that is retain moisture. And if you're retaining moisture in your coop in any way, that will lead to disease, bacterial growth, mold growth, and all the things you do not want in your coop. Now there's one caveat to that. If you are adding bedding to your coop, and I put bedding in our brooder when we are raising chicks, that is if you are extremely diligent in cleaning it out all the time. Because the manure that the chickens are producing is extremely moist, and it will sit there in certain areas. Like I live here in the South in Texas, right? And it is very humid. It does not evaporate very quickly at all, and there can be a ton of mold and bacteria growth. Now, all these topics I'm talking about will certainly elicit conversation, so I want you to leave your comments and questions in the comment section below, but be kind about it, of course. Okay, probably one of the biggest controversial topics when it comes to raising chickens is adding supplemental light. You can see that little light up behind me right there. We do add supplemental light for our chickens in the wintertime. And yes, it is to keep them laying. And no, it does not harm the chicken. All chickens, if they are going to continue to lay in the wintertime, need at least 14 hours of sunlight or light. Some people think this is cruel and it forces your hens to lay in the wintertime, and that is a very common misconception. Having light in the wintertime does not force the chicken to do anything. It merely provides a resource for the chicken to use, and it's only one of many resources for them to use in the winter to lay. And something else related to that is parroted misinformation, and that is that your chicken will run out of eggs, or they will lay too many eggs earlier in their life and not have any left over for their later years. And in chicken terms, I'm talking like year 3 or year 4. Now, I'm not just talking off the top of my head here. This is solid information from many avian vets, including Mike Petrick, DVM. You can look him up if you want. So if you want to have your hens laying through the winter or having a better chance to lay through the winter, provide them some extra light up to 14 hours a day. You can do that early in the morning or later in the evening. I've heard that early in the morning works better, but I choose the later in the evening method. So once the sun goes down, the light kicks on and it keeps going for a few more hours. Okay, let's talk about feeding your chickens. Now this, for some reason, seems to be a hot button topic as well. There's fermented feed versus non-fermented feed. There's organic feed versus non-organic feed. Free-ranging your chickens versus supplementing their diet. And scheduled feeding versus just having open feeders that are full all the time. Okay, let's tackle the first one. Free feeding versus scheduled feeding. As you can see from these, I free feed my chickens. They can eat whenever they want. I keep these feeders full for them, and chickens just do not overeat. So having scheduled feeding in my mind is just more work for yourself. Chickens will not overeat, but if you do give them a really fatty diet, like a lot of corn, they can develop, and I've had some develop this before, it's hemorrhagic fatty liver syndrome. And that killed a couple of my Rhode Islands. Okay, the next one, organic feed versus non-organic feed. To me, this one is a no-brainer. Always seek out the best food for your chickens. That means organic, non-GMO feed. If anybody remembers the issue with the Tractor Supply feed a few years ago, or actually it was Purina feed privately labeled for Tractor Supply, then you know what I'm talking about. The better feed for your chickens, the healthier they're going to be. It's just that simple. Okay, fermented feed versus non-fermented. I have never once ever thought about fermenting feed for my chickens. They say it can help them digest it quicker and they defecate less, but I've never experimented with it. If you've got any experience with that, let me know in the comment section below. But it's another hot button topic out there and I don't understand why. Okay, free range versus non-free range. I cannot free range my chickens. They will get picked off really easily. Now, I do have 2 dogs. One will protect them, the other one will eat them. And that's part of the reason why I have an electric fence up around here, around this coop. And this electric fence is 160 feet long. It is plenty big enough for 20 chickens. They can get a good amount of free range nutrition from being in this big pen. However, it is not nearly enough for what they need to survive. So if I didn't supplement their feed, they wouldn't live very long if I kept them exclusively in here and didn't feed them at all. You need a big amount of land for those birds to move around and pick through an area, to scratch through an area, and then give that area time to rejuvenate and the bugs to come back and the foliage, whatever the chickens do eat, to come back. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about free ranging a chicken. Plus predators. There are so many predators. I've lost only 1 chicken to a predator, and that was an owl. And that chicken was in a cage separated from the rest. She got out of that cage at night and got picked off by an owl. But by and by, the dogs, the fence, and locking them in the coop at night keeps them completely safe from predators. But if I let them free range and roost wherever they wanted, I wouldn't have any chickens left. Okay, another huge topic that is a hot button topic is what scraps or human food to feed your chickens. From all my experience with raising chickens and doing research for years is you do not feed your chickens meat. All right, that's going to induce them to peck each other, and they have the taste for it. Even though they're omnivores, I want to reduce any innate behavior that the chickens have for bullying and pecking each other by not giving them any meat. Now, yes, they can grab the occasional mouse if they can catch it, or yes, they will eat bugs all the time. But that is different than giving them, steak scraps. Now, another hot button topic that everybody argues about all the time is giving your chickens ground up eggshells. I personally don't do it, but if you want to do it, cool. The reason I don't do it is because I believe it could lead them to peck their own eggs. And I've had problems with hens pecking eggs in the past, and that's why I have these hen gear roll-away nesting boxes. If you haven't seen my videos on those, click at the top of the screen. And that also goes for things like avocado and beans. Now, a lot of people say that they feed their chickens beans. I don't. And I did a video also on what to feed your chickens and what not to feed your chickens in the past. And beans are one of the worst things that you can feed your chickens. They contain this compound, which can be very harmful to them. Some people say that they do it all the time and they've had no problems. But I've got to stick with what the vets say, the avian vets. So me personally, I'm not going to give them any beans at all. Now here's something I do feed my chickens all the time, and this is black soldier fly larva. Black soldier fly larva is very high in calcium, twice as high I think than mealworms. And for strong eggshells, you want that higher calcium in your chicken's diet. I did a video about higher calcium in your chicken's diet, and I featured these Grubterra black soldier fly larvae in that video, and I've used them for the entire time I've had my chickens. If you don't know this company, they rescue food scrap waste from grocery stores and restaurants and use that to grow the black soldier fly larvae. I think that's really cool, and if you're interested in them, click on the link in the description below the video. Oh, look who's coming to see me. Oh, look. As soon as I shake this thing, they come running because they absolutely love these things. There you go. Within 1 minute of throwing them on the ground, these things are gone. Okay, the final topic that I'm going to talk about is incubating chicken eggs. Now, there's one side that says using a broody hen and doing it the natural way is the best and only way to do it. And the other side says that putting them in an incubator is the best way to do it. And then actually a third way is purchasing chicks from a local store or local feed store or ordering them from a hatchery. Now for me personally, we've hatched eggs out from our flock, and we've also purchased them from a hatchery here in Texas. Now some are getting very upset at people who buy their chicks from a hatchery, and they say that it's incredibly cruel. Well, how else are you going to get your first chicks? I mean, yeah, you could find somebody local maybe selling chicks, but that's not common at all. I guess you could ask the question that if you have a hatchery and they're hatching out tons of roosters all the time, what happens to those roosters? Do they just cull them? Is that cool? Is it not cool? That's totally up to you. But I can tell you from just hatching out my own that I certainly get way more roosters than hens all of the time. And obviously, hens are the most coveted. Now, out of my own curiosity in talking about this topic, I'm going to call some hatcheries and see what they do with those roosters. Do they give them to meat processing plants? I don't know. Now, in terms of using a broody hen myself, I can't do that because none of my hens are really broody breeds at all, and I rarely, if ever, have a broody hen. So for me to have them hatch out chicks is darn near impossible. These are domesticated livestock, and without human intervention, they probably wouldn't get very far nowadays because we have selectively bred them, and if they're going to go back to the wild, that's pretty tough for a chicken, especially in terms of predators because everything likes to eat chicken. So some people say that broody hens can really help with raising the chicks, and they can be surrogates for other eggs, so they'll hatch out other hens' chicks, and that connection that they have with the chickens can be better for them. I don't know, my chickens are just fine, and they came from a hatchery and from me putting them in an incubator in my house. They all developed just fine, and we've got now 5-year-old chickens for certain breeds. Additionally, an incubator gives you more control on how those eggs are hatched. You could have a bad broody hen, meaning that hen could leave too often off of the eggs from sitting on them, and they would all just not make it anyway. So some hens are actually terrible mothers. Okay friends, I want you to make the best decisions for your hens and your chickens, because there's not always one right answer. You know what they say, there's 8 ways to skin a cat and there's 20 ways to build a house. I know, I'm an architect and I've seen framers and builders do it many different ways and it still turns out the same. There's many people who think if you don't do it the old-fashioned way, in exactly that way that they did it 100, 200 years ago, then you're doing it wrong. Don't listen to those people. There are many diverse ways to raise chickens. Just keep them healthy and that will keep them alive and thriving. All right, if you have any questions, please leave them for me in the comment section below. Now go check out this video right here, which is how we built our automatic watering system from a 5-gallon bucket. Have a beautiful, blessed day. We'll see you on the next video. Bye.